Hi, it's Claudia from Create with Claudia. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today's video is always a fun one for me to do. As you may or may not know by now, I am an Island Batik 2021 ambassador, and each month we have a new project to do. This month we are spreading the love and joy with AccuQuilt. AccuQuilt was one of the sponsors of the Island Batik ambassadors, and at the beginning of the year we got this great cutting machine. Let me just show you. It's heavy. It looks like so. And even though it's heavy, this thing is great. I'm going to tell you more about it later. And we also got a Go Cube, the AccuQuilt Go Cube, which has all kinds of different cutting shapes and sizes like that, triangles, that sort of thing. And again, I'll show you that later when I show you my project. This actually is the quilt I made with it. The challenge this month was to use the AccuQuilt Go Cube, use a block out of that, or a shape out of that, and combine it with the block that we got, which was the Hatties Choice block. I really like this block. It's a little reminiscent of a kaleidoscope, but it has extra parts to it, which really add a lot of dimension and movement to it. I really had fun with this block. It's called Hatties Choice. And when finished, it makes an 8-inch finished block, 8.5 inches when it's done like this. This is 8.5 inches, but when finished, it's 8 inches. And the way I used it, I used the Hatties Choice block, and I used all the same fabric and colors in that. You can see that one right here. And then I combined it with the half square triangle unit in the AccuQuilt Go box. Those are all half square triangles, and I made them sort of a cheater's version of the Lemoyne Star, which is this block here. The fabric that I used is called Harvest Blue. It was designed by Kathy Engel, and one of the things that was in my ambassador box was a packet of 10-inch squares, and it worked out perfectly. I don't have a ton of fabric left. I have some scraps, and that's what I'm going to make my project with today, and you'll see that. But I didn't have a whole lot of big pieces left. You can see I used all of those different Harvest Blues in the Lemoyne Stars, and then I used one of the yellows in part of the Hattie's Choice block. And then I just added a blue batik, that's sort of a medium blue, medium light blue. And then I used a white solid batik. And if you've never used their solids, they're really nice. I really like the way this pattern came out. You can see I added the blue corners here on those Lemoyne Stars made all out of half square triangles. Yes, those were all half square triangles to make up that block. And then I tied that in with the Hattie's Choice block. And you can see how it formed that ring around it. So it has sort of a secondary design. So like I said earlier, this was the challenge is to spread love and joy with AccuQuilt, which is a wonderful thing. I like giving quilts away. This is going to be going to, and I hope I don't get emotional, this is going to be going to the nursing home unit that my father was on for 3 years. He was there, he passed away a couple years ago, but they're still just, they were a lovely group of people that worked there, and sadly one of his main caretakers passed away last year. So I decided to make them a quilt. I wanted to make sure they were allowed to hang it. I don't know, nursing homes have different kinds of rules and things. So not only is it in memory of her, who took wonderful care of my dad for 3 years, it's in honor of all the staff that took care of my dad and who takes care of all of their patients, not just my dad, but they're just near and dear to our family's heart. And I just wanted to do something for them. So that's the quilt. And now I'm going to get back to showing you the other project so I don't cry. So the project that I'm doing, one of the things I like to do when I'm showing you the quilt that I'm giving away or whatever the quilt project is for, each month it's something different. I'm going to show you the quilt, and then I also like to show you just to do a little sort of bonus project, and that's what this video actually is about. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this block, I'm not going to take this one, but I'm going to show you how to make this block really quickly, and then I'm going to make an octagonal table topper. It's going to be really easy. We're just making one block, and then we're just doing some crumb quilting around the outside. So that's the project, and I'm going to get set up for that, and I'll show you how to cut some fabric using the AccuQuilt Go system, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, so like I said, this is the block we're going to be making today. It's the AccuQuilt Go Hattie's Choice block, and I'm going to show you really quickly how to cut it out. It's so simple. I tell you, that AccuQuilt Go system has really made a difference in much of my cutting. It just makes such easy and fast work of cutting out pieces for certain size blocks. I've actually, since I got it, I've actually bought 2 more dies just because I love it so much. But anyway, this is how we use it. You're going to take this and you're going to unfold it. It's really easy to use too. Okay, so here's the machine. It's all laid out, and now I'm ready to cut up some shapes. This is the Hatties Choice. Let me just show you what we have here. This is the die. And again, I'm going to refer you to the manufacturer's guidelines for more specifics, but you need basically for one block, you need 8 of section A, 4 of B, and 4 of C. And I think today I did have a couple, not many. Like I said, I used most of it up. I had a couple squares left from that Harvest Blue 10-inch stacker that I got, and I'm going to use this gorgeous blue poppies for, I think I'm going to do B with this one. So what I'm going to do, I'll just show you how I cut it. Okay, and I'm just going to, now normally I would take a little bit more time cutting, but for video's sake I'm not going to, and I'm just going to make sure that I have 4 layers here because I need 4 pieces of it. And I'm just going to make sure all 4 sides are covered. I put this on, and then I just wind it, kind of old-fashioned, like an old window in a car. But it's so easy. I mean, it just rolls right through. And then you just pull it out. And you have the 4 pieces. So there's the 4 pieces of B, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut A and C, and then we'll be ready to piece this block quickly together. Alrighty, so there are the pieces that I need. They're all cut and they're ready to go, and now I'm going to piece this block together. And again, I'm just going to show you very briefly how I do that. I'll lay it out for you in a minute. I'm going to move this machine, but I would refer to the manufacturer's instructions when you're putting this together. It's a really easy block to piece. The only thing I will say, really maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. That point is tricky, and it was really hard for me to get it really pointy on all 8 sides, but it worked out fine. And there were a couple I had to resew, but not many, because this system makes it so easy, and the way it's cut and it has sort of edges that you can work with. I'm not really good at explaining it. It's just a really fun tool to use, and it made easy work of this block. Okay, so here's the Hatties Choice block. This is the one I'm going to use in my project today, but I want to show you really quickly of the pieces I just cut out, how we put those together. So these are those corners, and like I said, I switched up the colors a little bit just for the heck of it. Okay, so that's how you first lay it out. And the first thing I did was I put the white pieces onto these blue pieces. I did this section first, this sort of center triangle, to make one big triangle. And I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you how that looks. It's really easy. You're going to start with one side, and you just sew a 1/4 inch down. And if you can see with the cutting how they line that up, it lines up perfectly with those cuts with that AccuQuilt Go machine. And I'm just going to use my 1/4 inch seam allowance right along that. Press it open, and when I come back, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I sewed the 2 smaller white triangles to the blue larger diamond, and that's what it's going to look like now. It's coming together, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a yellow one to each, a yellow sort of, I guess that's a kite shape, I'm not exactly sure what you call it. So that to this unit here, this one to this one, and so forth, and then you'll see how it's coming together again. Alright, so now I've done that part. You're getting the idea now how this is coming together. And then what I'll do is I'll sew these two units together and these two, and then we'll piece the whole thing together. And that's where it's going to get tricky, is that last seam, the long one here. That's where you're going to have to pin and really watch those points. Alrighty, here is the last part, and now the only thing we have left to do is join these two sides, and this is again where it's tricky. Pin, pin, pin. And then when I come back, the whole block will be finished, and then we're going to put this whole, I'm going to show you my crumb quilting method for the outside, and then we'll put it all together. Alrighty, so here is my Hatties Choice, the other one. You can see them both together. It never ceases to amaze me how much fun it is to make different blocks and see how they turn out. They are 8.5 inches, and now we're going to put the rest of the octagonal table topper together. I can't decide which one in the center I'm going to use. I'll maybe addition them later. So what I'm doing for the outside, this is sort of freeform quilting now. It's crumb quilting, and I'm going to show you. I've already cut out the squares to go around this piece. And these are all scraps from that Harvest Blue fabric, that Island Batik fabric I got. And they're different shapes and sizes, and this is what you're going to need. And if you know how to crumb quilt, then by all means go ahead and do it. But I will show you very briefly how to do it. But what you're going to need for the outside, I'll show you how it's going to come together. You need 4 squares that are cut 6.5 by 8.5 inches, and that's going to go around. And then you need 4 squares that are cut 6.5 inches. Excuse me. Let me start over. 4 rectangles that are cut 6.5 by 8.5 inches. Yes, I remember my high school math. Actually, that's probably from elementary school. And then 4 squares cut 6.5 inches square. So these are all scraps left over from this project that I made, the quilt I made. And you can see here's some left over from that I'd already pieced together. There's like 5 different of the fabrics. And here's another piece. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you very quickly. This is a real quick synopsis of how I make my scrappy pieces. And basically, here are the scraps, and I just start pulling from my pile and sewing. I try to match them up a little bit so they're sort of the same size. And I'm just going to start sewing. And I just pair them up, and the first thing I do is match up some pairs and start sewing them together. You don't have to worry about seam allowance or anything. It's just very easy quilting. So once I've done that, I normally just cut off these threads here. I would normally press these. I'm just going to finger press them right now just because I don't feel like running to my ironing board. And let's see, now that's a little small. You might put it on that end, so maybe I'll just sew that end really quickly. The other thing that I would do is before I sew these 2 units together, I'm going to trim off the edge I'm going to sew, and I'll just show you that. You just want nice, even. They don't even have to be straight, which is what makes this so much fun. It's just such sort of liberating sewing. Well, let's try it again. All right, there we go. And then I think I'll just sew these 2 edges together. So you can see how it's starting to come together. And then, let's see, you can make it bigger and bigger. I just keep piecing units together. Actually, that fits pretty well together. I may sew that piece together. Let me just move all this. That's why I never like to throw out my scraps. Maybe my teeny tiny ones, but anything a little bit bigger I'm not going to throw out. I hate to do that. So what I'm going to do, normally I would even that side out. I don't have a ruler big enough. Let's see. We'll just sort of eyeball this here. This is, if you're making a regular quilt block, do not do this. You want your cutting to be much more precise than this. Oops, always close up that that rotary cutter. And this one's already trimmed up. So let's go ahead and sew that one edge, and then you'll see the finished product. So here we go. Again, you press it. This is what it looks like, and then you're going to cut out the size square that you're going to need, and you can make this as big as you want. I have some really big pieces. If you watch that video, you can see I make some really big pieces out of it. Basically, you're creating yardage from your scraps. So here again is the cut pieces of stuff I made earlier, of items that I made earlier. And I'm going to lay this out. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a picture of it and then lay it out in a different way, or I just go for it and sew it. Today I think I'm just going to go for it and sew it. Sometimes something will really stand out to me that I don't like the way it looks, but I definitely think I like that block better than the other one, color-wise. Now these two match together. I'd probably roll that around just so they're, give it a little bit more scrappy crumb quilty look. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit. So here you go. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to take this to my machine, and I'm going to piece this top together. Again, very simple sewing. You're going to sew, it's like a big 9 patch. So this row together, this row together, this row together, and then sew the 3 rows together. And then you'll have the top, and then you have your choice. I'm going to cut this down to an octagon, but you can leave it as a square if you want, but I just felt like doing something a little bit different. And I'll show you how to do that next. All right, so here it is sewn together. Love the way it turned out. It's just a lot of fun, very simple, and a great way to use up a lot of those scraps. And also a fun way to learn a new block and to use that AccuQuilt Go, that block in the center. So what I've done is I'm getting ready to quilt this. I had some backing fabric. In fact, this is Island Batik's backing fabric. It's called Gardens of the Asylum, and it's from their Starry Night collection that was out in stores in February of 2021. And there's a piece of string here. I just think this is so pretty, and luckily I had enough left over, which was a perfect size for the back of this. Now again, I'm going to cut this into an octagon, but before I do, I want to quilt it, and I'm going to do very easy, just straight line quilting. And yes, I'm going to cut away some of it. It might make you cringe, but I'm going to do that. You could cut it now. I've layered it, of course, and then the top on top. And what I originally thought I was going to cut it before I quilted it, but then it would shift a little bit, and because of that weird shape, I wanted to have it quilted before I cut it. Now again, you could easily leave this square and just bind it as is. I think it looks great like so. I think it'll be really pretty, especially with like a dark, if you had more of this dark poppy, the blue poppies from that Harvest Blue collection, or another dark blue, which I think I do have. The octagonal shape, excuse me, is just it's the same kind of binding. I use 2.5 inch strips to bind mine, one continuous strip around. The corners will be a little bit tricky, but it's not that difficult. So again, what I'm going to do now is quilt this, just easy straight line quilting, and then I'm going to show you how I trim off the edges. Okay, so here it is. I actually trimmed it all up. I wanted to square it up just so you could see how it looks when it's square. But I am going to go one step further, and I know it makes me a little nervous too. We're just going to cut off the 4 corners and make this an octagon, just a little bit of a different shape. Again, very easy. You can just cut it this way. It measures about 21 inches or so when finished. 21 inches square if you left it this way. But like I said, we're going to do something different. I said I was going to do straight line quilting, but I ended up doing straight line, but a hash grid, like a grid type pattern. Very easy, simple. It didn't take me long at all. But basically, to cut this off, we are going to go corner to corner where the seam is, where this longer, this 8.5 by 6.5 rectangle matches up with the 6.5 inch square. And we're going to cut it. So you want to be really careful when you do this. And I know it's kind of cringy when I get real nervous when I'm doing this. And you will have some threads, and I know some people are going to ask me about that, if the threads are going to loosen. But with the binding and when you sew over it, there should not be a problem there at all. So if you cut your thing square, You're just going to line that up and cut off that corner. There you go. So you have this piece. I don't know if you can do something with it. You might be able to. There's one corner. I'm going to finish the rest. All right, there we go. There is the Octagon table topper. Really pretty. I like it. It's a little different shape, and it would be pretty on a pretty on a round table, I think, or if you have like a side table or something like that. But next thing I'm going to do now is bind it, and we'll see how that turns out. Then I think I'm going to use a darker binding for this one, and then it'll be done, ready to go and ready to use. Okay, so I'm back. I'm finished with my Octagon table topper. Here we go, Octagonal table topper. I hope you can see it. It's a little bright with the white and the yellow, but I really like the way it turned out. It's lots of fun. It's a very unique little table topper, perfect for a round table or square for that matter. It doesn't really matter. This is all part of my June 2021 Island Batik Challenge. This is a separate part of it. Here's the quilt that I made, and this month again the theme was spread love and joy with AccuQuilt. And so every single piece in this quilt except for the back, and I did show you a picture of the back. I actually had some 10-inch squares left over, and I put those on the back. And I'll show you another picture here in a second. But every single piece in this quilt was cut with AccuQuilt, and that includes the binding. It's just, that tool has just done wonders for me. I really love how quickly I can cut with that, especially certain shapes. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I actually bought 2 more dies because I like it so much, and I have lots of plans in my head for some of these things. I would like to thank AccuQuilt, Island Batik, Schmetz Needles, which I always have in my machine, and Hobbs Batting. I use the polyfill for this project. Let me show it to you one more time. And one last time, I do want to show you the Harvest Blue Island Batik fabric I used. This is the quilt that will be going to the nursing home unit that my father spent the last 3 years of his life at. Most of that staff all became like a second family to our family. So I hope they appreciate this. As always, you can subscribe to my channel. I try to post videos every week. I'm not always successful, especially during the summer months. I find like I have other things to do outside, but I try. I am on social media at Create with Claudia, and my website is www.createwithclaudia.com. You can find the pattern for this Octagon table topper and a little bit more information as well about the quilt and where it's going. So thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.